Now, the Namibia Institute of Public Administration and Management was established in 2010 with the main purpose of transforming the public service in Namibia through improving management, leadership, as well as professional competencies. Over the years, NIPAM has spearheaded and driven a number of continuous professional training initiatives that have built and strengthened capacity within the public sector significantly here in Namibia. The most recent milestone in the history of the institution relates to the accreditation of 3 of its qualifications by the Namibia Qualifications Authority, the NQA. But what does this development mean for NIPAM in particular and the public sector in general? In the same vein, what does the future of skills development in the public sector look like? To help us answer these and other questions, I'm joined by an esteemed panel this morning. Madam Maria Nangolo, the Executive Director at NIPAM. Good morning, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning.
We're also joined this morning by Mr. Frans Gertse, Chief Executive Officer at the Namibia Qualifications Authority. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
We're also joined this morning by Madam Himethora Kaimu. She is the Director of Quality Assurance at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Good morning to you, ma'am, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
We're also very delighted to be joined this morning by Mr. Morris Likukela, Deputy Director of Human Resources in the Office of the Prime Minister. Good morning to you, sir, and welcome. Before we get to the particulars of this conversation around accreditation within the public sector, let's take a look at the short following insert. Welcome back. My name is Denver Kisting. This morning we're looking at accreditation within the public sector. We're coming to you live from the Government Information Center in the Namibian capital. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we get to the particulars specifically around accreditation in the public sector, please give us an overview of your respective institutions, those that you represent here this morning, and their mandates. Starting with you, Madam.
Thank you very much. NIPAM is a statute of Parliament, Act of number 10, 2010, which basically mandates NIPAM to be the transforming arm of government as a management consulting body. And it's mandated to provide capacity building interventions. These capacity building interventions are set out in the Act, which speaks to providing training, and in this instance, we have actually gone on to expand on the training offering, providing face-to-face training as well as online training. We have the aspect of research and capacity evaluation. Before we conduct any training or capacity intervention, we actually go through an evaluation process, which is to assess the gaps that are currently within the institutions. This is particularly done with the Office of the Prime Minister. The 4th offering speaks to consulting. This is being the business consulting arm of government. And in the Act, it speaks that NIPAM should be the think tank of government. So that aligns very well with providing consulting services in areas that are requested, particularly by our 5 clientele, which is central government, the regional councils, as well as local authority, and lastly, the public enterprises. So in a nutshell, that gives the mandate and overview of NIPAM, why it was instituted, and the offerings that it currently provides.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for that very comprehensive overview about NIPAM's mandate. Your work is cut out for you. You indeed have a very important role to fulfill in the public sector, in particular in this country. Mr. Gertse, please talk to us about the Namibia Qualifications Authority, your mandate, why it is that you exist, and what it is that you do.
Thank you so much, Denver. I am here representing the Namibia Qualifications Authority, a state-owned enterprise established by an Act of Law, Act 29 of 1996, and we are established as a regulatory body. Our mandate is to set up and develop a national qualifications framework. And in so doing, we must ensure that all qualifications offered, awarded in Namibia are of such nature that it meets standards, national standards, which are set by all stakeholders involved in education and training. We will later on reflect on that. We also do recognition of qualifications, both obtained through the formal stream or the non-formal stream. And that's basically done through recognition of prior learning. Other functions of the NQA, or as we call it, the mandate, is to accredit people, institutions, and make sure that they meet quality parameters. Basically, we are also a body which is a forum for matters pertaining to qualifications. We are the chief advisors with regards to qualifications to the nation. Another important function of the NQ is the recognition of qualifications attained outside of the country, and that keep us quite busy. I must add at this juncture that our vision is to empower the nation through the recognition of qualifications. And that empowerment element we would probably have to unpack as we go on, because that is also at the heart of what our colleague Ms. Nankolo has just indicated. Besides that, we remain the institution that advises on all matters pertaining to qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very elaborate overview about what it is that the NQA does. I think it's important to mention at this juncture, as you put it, that you gauge whether or not an institution and what it offers to our students operates within the confines, within the parameters of what amounts to quality, but ultimately that it is about the empowerment of the community that you serve. You're not disenfranchising anybody by saying whether or not they meet and comply with quality standards. Madam Kaimu, we're very happy to have a representative at your level from the Namibia University of Science and Technology. Please talk to us about perhaps what the Directorate of Quality Assurance in particular does.
The Namibia University of Science and Technology is actually one of the two main public universities in the country, the other one being the University of Namibia. And the Namibia University of Science and Technology, or NUST as it is known, and its predecessor, the Polytechnic, has been mandated to provide science and technology education, applied research and innovation. So the key mandate of the university is actually to provide that kind of hands-on type of practical, career-oriented education. So the Directorate of Quality Assurance that I'm heading, it's responsible for coordinating the quality assurance function in the university, starting from the programs and every other service that the university provides. So I think through that directorate, we also provide services to other institutions regarding capacity building in different areas of quality assurance, be it accreditation, institutional audits, or reviews, or any other related matters.
Very well. You're
Yes.
touching on the fundamentals of what constitutes quality assurance. I would like us to just look at it very briefly in layperson's terms. What exactly are we talking about when we're talking about quality assurance?
When we talk about quality assurance, especially when it comes to institutions of higher education, we're talking about making sure, in layman's term, making sure that the university is doing what it intended to do. So if we keep to the promises that we are giving to the stakeholders, if we intend to provide, for example, science and technology education at NUST, are we doing it or not? And if we're doing it, how are we doing it? How do we know that we're really reaching or achieving our goals in terms of providing quality education? Now, what is quality education? We can define it further as we go along.
Thank you very much also for that comprehensive update. Mr. Lukukela, what the layperson knows about the Office of the Prime Minister is a number of things. We do know that the Prime Minister, the head of the body called the Office of the Prime Minister, is the head of government business in Parliament. But we also know that there are a number of directorates within this critically important function, this critically important platform and office. I would like you to briefly touch on the office and what it does in general, but then we'd like to also focus on your directorate and what it is responsible for.
Thank you.
Organizers of this event, Mrs. Nangolo, the Executive Director of the Namibian Institute of Public Management and Administration. It's really very important for this event to take place. But I also think it is more important for the assortment of the stakeholders in front here that we can have a chance to sit and talk. And I would also like to thank my supervisors that chose me to come here, because really I have a little bit of like institutional memory from observations regarding training and involvement in the public service, more especially in the OMAs and RCs. So I also feel great because it's a platform where I can really share this. And the role of the Prime Minister in general, you can actually say it even when you are at home, because Office of the Prime Minister is Office of the Prime Minister. It's the head of the government. It gives the Prime Minister really like the driver of the whole government. So people want to understand it like the government means the ministries only, but actually everything, as long as that is controlled by the law of this country, the Prime Minister has the control through the Parliament. So that's the position. We cannot speak further than that because then we might miss on the point which we are here for. Our director, for example, is responsible for training and development, and that means it's coordinating these training interventions out there. And that is why we have developed the policy. And interestingly, you should note that in that policy we have stated that NIPAM is the primary training provider. Because of the history that I have said, we have seen a lot of sporadic training providers coming in and out until our colleagues said, no. We have to say who comes in and who comes out. I think you still have a challenge because people say, no, it's those NIPAM people. Us with short courses, we can come in and out. So this is where we are, and this is how we position ourselves. Maybe to say that we have even a milestone where we talk about the competency framework. I think we can talk about it even later.
Very well. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
I think the foundation has been laid. We understand what it is that your institutions do. We are very familiar with your mandates, and I'd like us to get into why we are here today. Madam Nangolo, talk to us about, from your perspective, what the value is of accreditation in general, but specifically how that value translates into what NIPAM has to offer.
Well, in layman's terms, accreditation, like my learned colleague from NAS has provided us with a prelude to it, is basically setting a standard and ensuring that as you go through the crafting, the development, and the actual implementation of your training, that you adhere to the laid down standards. The second aspect to it is that it provides assurance not only to the client, but also to the offer, meaning the lecturer or the institution offering the service. Now, what's the value addition for NIPAM? If I go back a little bit into history, NIPAM has been operational now for about 12 years. And during that journey, the emphasis has been to provide the capacity building as per the mandate, but at the same time also to begin setting up systems and processes so as to ensure that it's a quality offering that is, being offered at the end of the day. As a result, having looked at where we have started and where we are now, we began to look at what is it that the client wants. And through research, we realized that a certain aspect or segment of our target audience actually wanted to have qualifications that have an articulation arrangement, qualifications that are accredited, and not only attendance certificate, which was the trend at the time. So we began our journey to look at how best can we meet the needs of our client, but at the same time, what is the current status globally in terms of management development institutions providing either accredited courses or just doing your standalone, competency development, which doesn't necessarily require you to have a paper. Then we also looked at the cultural aspect in Namibia, and it's becoming a trend in the region. Noting our history, we have a lot of people who have gone through trainings, but were never certified. They have the skills, they've got the competencies, but they don't have the paper to show. And as a result, we looked at all of these factors, and we looked at how can we package it to provide value. We then went through the process of accreditation, whereby we'll be talking about the 3 courses later on during the course of our discussion. And these courses are specifically targeted at the executive and management leadership of the public sector, and we'll be getting a little bit more into detail about that. The value addition is that these courses will give you an articulation arrangement, meaning once you have completed it and you would like to pursue it in a degree format, you can always enroll at the universities that provide it as an offering at degree level, and that provides the articulation. But most importantly, you'll know that you have a certificate that provides you with the assurance that it's quality. It's quality. It has gone through the quality assurance checks, and you've got a valuable certificate that would be recognized globally.
Lots of hard work, many hours of sacrifice on the part of you and your team culminated in the accreditation of those courses. So that needs to be acknowledged at this juncture as well, resulting in what you called quality offering by the institution for its clients. Mr. Gertz, as you explained to us earlier in great detail, but what it is that you do in terms of your statutory mandate, I believe you are the custodian, therefore, of what we call accreditation. What do you make of this development as far as NIPAM is concerned? How much value will it in fact add to NIPAM and its offerings?
Well, let me first and foremost congratulate NIPAM for the milestone that they have reached. It takes a lot of hard work, commitment, understanding, frustration.
Patience, one would imagine.
Absolutely, to get to this point. So congratulations. Before answering your question, I would want to add to what the ED has just responded to, the value of accreditation. And in this instance, let me talk to 3 elements in terms of stakeholders who would benefit from accreditation. The first one is the student. a student gets confidence that the qualification that they attain is of such nature that it will be recognized locally and globally. So they have trust and confidence in the qualification, and that's motivation, besides the fact that they want to grow. For NIPAM, it is an exercise of self-assessment. Where do we stand? How can we do self-improvement? Which areas can we improve, etc. So it's an exercise through which they interrogate what they are doing, and as Ms. Keimu has said, whether they are fit for the purpose. But important, more important also is the fact that once an employee goes through training at a quality assured institution, accredited institution, we assume that such an employee is, number one, proud, two, performs better, and the service delivery in government improves. And that is where we are. Now, to come back to the question that you have asked, yes, accreditation serves a number of purposes. And from what I've said, one can assume that we need to promote accreditation. Not accreditation per se, because accreditation is part of the bigger picture of quality assurance. Yes, that's the thinking at this point in time.
Thank you, sir. Madam Kami, we're grateful to institutions such as the Namibia University of Science and Technology, of course also the University of Namibia, who have walked this path before, who have paved the way for us. Walk us through what it entails to ensure quality that culminates in accreditation, and what you make from the perspective of an institution of higher learning about this accolade that NIPAM now scored after lots of hard work.
Thank you. Let me start by saying that accreditation or any other quality assurance scheme would have two purposes. And I think they have, both Mr. Gertze and the ED has alluded to the fact that it's about improvement, it's about accountability as well. Accountability to the different stakeholders that we serve. So for NIPAM, it's accountability to the students, to the public that is funding NIPAM itself, the government, and so on. So it's basically an accountability scheme. Now, with every accountability schemes, you would have transparency. So NIPAM is saying, I'm transparent enough, I'm opening myself for scrutiny, which is quite key to the issue of accountability. So we want to achieve accountability. We want all institutions operating in the country to become accountable to all the stakeholders and to themselves. So that is why there is a process. You mentioned the process that will take us through accreditation. The process starts with self-evaluation. You need to try and look at yourself, come up with your own self-reflection, both achievements and challenges, and ways of how to improve, strategies on how to address your own challenges. You need to, I mean, all of us, when you go out of your house, you want to look into your own mirror before somebody tells you something. So that's the kind of self-evaluation that the institutions must also contact themselves before others can tell them. So the other issue of improvement, we want to improve. Education is about improvement. We cannot educate if we don't improve. There's no ways. So that is the other purpose of accreditation and all other quality assurance schemes that you would find. So now, with I think Mr. Gertze can talk about the different types of accreditation later, because what they have gone through probably is in a combination of institutional accreditation and program accreditation.
Thank you very
So
much.
thank you.
Thank you. This improvement that you're referring to is, of course, continuous improvement. We can't just improve once a year, once every 10 years. We need to improve continuously.
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Kukela, this improvement is geared towards our public servants. And we need to be sure that we have skilled public servants. We need to know that they can be upskilled throughout and they can be reskilled throughout. We'll get into the particulars of the 3 accredited programs in a short bit. I'd like to hear from you, what does it mean for our public servants? Because they are the clients. They're the ones who will be skilled in this particular way through the institution. What does this development mean for them?
Once more again, thank you very much and congratulations to actually get the accreditation status. I have actually worked with the previous EDs, sitting in the Office of the Prime Minister, and I think one of the EDs said, I just want people to do the work there. I don't want to talk about accreditation. I mean, this is how different it has been regarding the accreditation at Nippon. And congratulating the current ED for attaining this accreditation is really looking back to see how hard it has been. But let me tell you, if you say, for example, which of the country is illiterate, some actually places, countries like Finland, and you talk about a lot of indicators, and one of the indicators is like most of them have bachelor degrees. And when you come to Namibia, they said everyone has what can read and write. So these indicators shows the level of reskilling, retooling, and so forth. But NIPAM had a challenge. People have gone to many trainings and they cannot show those papers. And to show them to who? Because if you take them to NQA, it's just an attendance certificate. So this has been a challenge, and that is why the government, from our side, we are very much happy and we appreciate it. We should just be like consistent with our policy development to lay the foundation so that we create that support environment that puts this retooling at the attention of our principals in various OMAs. Yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
We are still coming live from the Government Information Center here in the Namibian capital in Windhoek. We're also live on the Facebook page of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, as well as on the YouTube channel and the Facebook page of the Namibian Institute of Public Administration and Management. If you have a question for one of the esteemed panelists, if you have a comment that is of a constructive nature that you'd like to contribute, you can dial the following number in the Namibian capital. It will also be on your screen, 061 061 400397. 061 400397. Our focus for this conversation this morning revolves around accreditation in the public sector. Madam Nagolo, I think the time has arrived for us to get into the detail of the 3 programs of NIPAM that had been accredited by the NQA.
Yes, thank you, Denver. I can walk you through the 3 programs that have been accredited. Before I get into that, it's just to set forth, that we went through a targeted approach at arriving at the 3 programs. For example, the program, the postgraduate certificate in public sector is targeted towards the management, the executive management of the public service. And here I'm referring to the EDs, my counterparts, as well as the deputy EDs. The focus there is really around strategic leadership, to be able to lead at a strategic level, considering the times that we are currently in. So the course takes into account contextual and relevant issues that a person in the position of an executive director needs to be, upskilled with, and at the same time needs to have the required competencies to be able to drive the national agenda. Because we must not forget that at the end of the day, all these training offerings are supposed to lead to impact. We have our national development goals that clearly sets out where the country is heading to, and the EDs are the driving forces of the public sector to ensure that we are actually having the required impact as per our plans. Then we have the second offering, which is targeted towards the directors. Now we know that the directors are sort of the hardcore operational level of the public sector. Directors then would have their different designations. However, the course goes on to provide, the core competencies again that one would require at that level. So the question would come about, how did we identify the core competencies? This links up with what my colleague at the Prime Minister's office indicated earlier, that a competency framework was developed by the Office of the Prime Minister. The competency framework basically goes into what are the key competencies required to function at the various levels of government. And those competencies, how can they be achieved? And this is where NIPAM then came in and provided, a targeted program that targets again the various levels with targeted information. So it's not just a general executive development program or just a random one. It's pretty much targeted and linked to the competency framework. So the third level is where we're looking at middle management, and this relates to the chiefs of the different ministries. And again, here it's contextual to that operating level. So the three programs in a nutshell, like I said, is driven in terms of an exit outcome, is for the executive as well as management to be able to lead strategically and to be able to have the core competencies required to take some hardcore decisions considering our economic climate and all the other socioeconomic aspects that we are currently experiencing as a country. And so that, in a nutshell, gives us what the training offerings have been targeted for and their content.
Thank you very much. What I'm inferring from what you're sharing with us is you're empowering hardcore people to make hardcore decisions during hardcore times.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Gertse, Madam Nangolo is raising a very important matter. She's saying that institutions also have a responsibility to produce qualifications that make an impact in society. Is that one of the goals that one can infer from what the mandate of the NQA in terms of accreditation also is? That you need to accredit courses, you need to accredit qualifications of which you are sure that those will result in impact in society.
Oh yes, certainly. As I've said, when we crafted the mission or the vision of the NQA, it was deliberately agreed upon that we talk about empowering the nation. Perhaps I should take a step back and give a very brief background of the genesis or the origins of the NQA. When our brothers and sisters came back from outside before independence, they came back with different qualifications, different skills, attained in different parts of the world, with different cultures, different levels of development. And obviously, we all wanted to be gainfully employed or contribute to the development of this country. And incidentally, the NQA was positioned in the office of the Prime Minister before the act was passed, and then it was moved to the then Ministry of Higher Education. And that's when we were working in government. Ms. Kemo and myself, we were colleagues. In fact, we started on the same day at the NQA. Now, we don't just do quality assurance because it's fashionable or because other nations are doing it. We deliberately focus on setting standards for any occupation or any profession. We work with professional bodies so that a person is trained, whether it being as an engineer, we know that the content of the program which the person has covered is linked to the outcomes or competences that are required to perform in that occupation or profession. And therefore, the impact is focused on the outcome of the qualification. But I must hasten to add here, Denver, this is just the beginning. You can have the best designed qualification, you can have the best institution. It is what we do after accreditation that will make the impact. Now, in the instance of NIPAM, for example, when people come or NIPAM reaches out to them, use and offer these programs, which now actually add value to or enable people to study further on top of, alongside these qualifications. They are empowered. Reskilling will take place, upskilling will take place, and they will perform better. And that is what we are all striving towards. That's what the charter, public service charter, aims at achieving. Service offered by government where the client is happy. And when I read the purpose of the qualifications as part of the accreditation process, it is clearly stating that we need to up the game in service delivery across the country, not in specific offices. And I trust that now the focus is on the EDs, the middle management, and that it will further cascade to all levels in the public service. The impact, therefore, is not on the offering, but the performance after attainment of this qualification. And for that, we all need to play our part.
Mr. Gertje, you're making me wonder now, in the instance that an institution no longer offers that qualification, whose impact initially was clear or seemingly clear, is it possible then to revoke accreditation after it had been awarded, out of interest?
Oh yes, the Act makes provision for that.
So one cannot rest on one's laurels. As you said, it's only the beginning.
It's only the beginning. In fact, Denver, it's exciting times. Everyone is talking about AI, artificial intelligence. Everyone is talking about the sustainable development goals. Everyone is talking about the planet, green energy, the ICT technology. The landscape is changing. So no institution can rest on their laurels expecting to achieve and compete with doing the things the same way they have been doing all along.
Including the NQA.
Oh yes, certainly.
Thank you very much, sir. If you have a question, if you have a comment, if you'd like to engage us, the number to dial in Windhoek is 061 400 397. 061 400 397. Madam Kaimu, Mr. Likukele earlier shared with us, particularly before the establishment of NIPAM, training was offered what appeared to have been in silos, and intermittently one still sees that institutions operate in silos. I'd like to gauge your take on how important collaboration is across the spectrum, across the bouquet of institutions of higher learning, how we can benchmark, how we can peer review, how we can learn from one another and build and capacitate each other instead of intermittently, unfortunately, breaking each other down.
Yeah. For me, one of the biggest reasons why we need to collaborate is that we should not take our focus from the receiver of the education that we are trying to provide. The receiver is the Namibian student. And that Namibian student is not going to work for the institutions where they are training. They are going to work for the country or perhaps for the region and so on. So collaboration is very important because we don't know where that student is going to end up. If that student will end up in any SADC country, we need to have those benchmarking arrangements with many of our partners. So it's very important that institutions collaborate. When we develop programs at NAST, as an example, we obviously are guided by the qualifications framework that has been mentioned before, because it's important that every qualification that is developed in the country is meaningful. Meaningful in a sense of the impact that was already referred to. So we need to make sure we need to make sure that we include all the stakeholders in that particular program. People that have a stake in that program should be included in the process of development, but not only in the process of development, even when we review the program, even when we moderate the assessments. You know, at universities, we actually make use of lots of external moderators coming from industries and so on. So we need to be actually engaging our stakeholders at all levels of our training provision.
Thank you, Madam. Mr. Lukukela, what Mr. Gerster reminded of us earlier, that as the public sector, as public servants, we have a very serious responsibility to deliver services to all Namibian people. Talk to us about how leaders in the public space, in the public sector, see to it that the services that we render, that our service delivery is not only accessible, but that it also is effective and efficient throughout.
Thank you so much. It's quite very, it's quite very interesting these days that what is happening out there is also happening inside Namibia. The focus that we see outside of the public trying to tell the leaders, like, give us the service, actually changed. They say, give us quality service, right? They are no longer looking for services. They are looking for quality services.
Mm.
So if you are giving...
Mr. Lukukela, just one moment. I understand we're experiencing a slight technical difficulty, so I think we'll take a short break and look at the insert again.
All right.
Fix the technical difficulty and we will be right back. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. My name is David Kissing. We're coming to you live from the Government Information Centre in the Namibian capital, Windhoek. Our focus for this discussion this morning is accreditation in the public sector. Mr. Lukukela, yes, you were contextualizing to us the responsibility that leaders in the public space have to see to it that the service that we deliver is accessible, is efficient, and is effective throughout.
That's what we also see here. Like when they are demanding for quality services. In Namibia, it's hardly for a person to ask just for a service. Most of us now demand for quality services. What it means for the leader is to make sure that they are very good in their portfolios. So we have seen the emphasis placed on this element. For example, from the previous dispensations of NIPA, they were having what you call MMDPs. This was really to emphasize that these leaders, they have to have it. But SMDPs somehow and MMDPs, they were at least there. A lot of issues have been said, but when we are looking at the new accreditation, we also observe that it really targets them, the leaders, because if you are not there, it's a vacuum, as if there is nobody. When there's no leader, there's nobody, but people are there. So you have to help a lot of people by creating what they call cutting-edge leaders. Yeah. I would like to also say that want more accreditation. Because if you look at the government job structures, it's really like having a lot of us work for them. So I wouldn't like to go and learn how to coordinate my work from a fly-by-night consultant. I want to know, because people out there, they want quality service, and I cannot get quality education from a fly-by-night institution. So it's very, very important. Our policy put NIPOM at the center stage. We don't know what will happen to NIPOM, but they really have to survive to answer that they are the primary coordinators of training in government, meaning the Ministry of Education cannot train their accountant without informing NIPOM that don't you have a program that is offering accounting training? And they will actually say, we don't have. But if we are to get someone, at least NIPOM should be happy about that person.
Thank you, sir. While you have the floor, and in pursuit of us wanting more accredited qualifications, and for us to rid ourselves perhaps of fly-by-night institutions as you're referring to them, remind us about the responsibility through its mandate of the Public Service Commission and what role the Commission plays to see to it that we add value to our qualifications by ensuring and capacitating and enabling accreditation.
Thank you again, because that question gives me like confidence to answer on behalf of the Commission. At least the Commission now will not allow training that is not on the training plan. Meaning you have not done your work if you don't have a training plan. So it's very important. The public service is the overseer. They actually see any wrong things out there and they inform the big bosses, not the big bosses, okay. They inform our principals that this is not okay. And if it's not okay, the law is closed. That's the Commission. In many areas, recruitment and so forth. In training, there has been a number of training regimes like study leaves and so forth. But institutions, they commit resources, the days you're absent, the monies and so forth. And if you don't have the training plan, the Commission have the right to reject such plans. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Madam Nagola, before I gauge your take on how NIPOM measures the impact that your qualifications have in our society, in the public sector, what do you make of collaboration across institutions and how important that is to see to it that what we deliver to the market is quality offering, as you put it earlier?
Well, it's a very important aspect to consider in any institution. Your stakeholders are key. And with regard to NIPOM, we actually go and segment them. So we have what I indicated as our clientele, which basically looks at central government, your regional councils, your local authority, as well as your public enterprises. So they sort of constitute what we would call then as OMAs, the ministries, agencies of government. Secondly, in terms of stakeholders, is that we look internally from the academia fraternity. They have been instrumental, in fact, in terms of providing technical advice and input during the process of accreditation. So we've had a committee that looked into matters of accreditation with our stakeholders. Part of the accreditation process in any event requires that you go through stakeholder consultations. Stakeholder consultations in the case of the specific programs that have been accredited is that we started off with our parent, which is the Prime Minister's Office, the HRD department, which my colleague is representing. So we started off with them. And then at the same time ensuring that the 5 clients that I've mentioned, they were equally included in the process to advise us where are the challenges, where are the gaps. And if we were to capacitate and upskill in the different programs that are being offered, what gaps do we need to fill? So when I spoke earlier about capacity evaluation, it actually entailed going back to the stakeholders and stakeholders providing us with input and providing, constructive criticism in terms of what are the areas required for training and where we ought to be strengthening our training approaches. The other aspect is that We also benchmarked it against countries like Singapore, who is a partner. We've got specific partnership agreements with Singapore, India, as well as the South African School of Government, together with other management development institutes in Africa. So the benchmarking exercise also took part at that level, and being the African Development Institute's Network's vice president made it easy as well to ensure that the benchmarking exercise was comprehensive enough and that we had varied input from the various members of the network representing the continent Africa, as well as, of course, the external ones that I've mentioned earlier. So getting back to your question in terms of stakeholders, it was very broad. It was also targeted. And we now have a product that we believe at this point in time and at this time is a quality offering, but I must add that it would be continuous development and improvement to ensure that we remain current and relevant. The world is not static. The offerings that we currently have will have to be reviewed in the next year or two. It's also a requirement from NQA that we continue with the improvement of the qualifications. So that becomes a continuous thing. But it brings me again to the aspect of service delivery.
Just very briefly, please. We're slowly starting to run out of time.
Just in terms of service delivery, because at the end result is that we would like the public sector to be transformed in terms of attitudes, behavior, as well as skills and the abilities. So the competencies are there to be able to deliver on the public good.
And those competencies are a measurement in themselves.
Yes, that's correct.
I really wish we had the entire Friday to continue talking about this, but we don't. Mr. Gertze, before we get to our final remarks this morning, I have a bit of an awkward question for you. Some may wonder, why was NIPAM allowed by the NQA to operate without having had accredited courses for such a long time?
Well, there are different ways to answer that question. Allowed in terms of giving permission? No. Now, what happened is the foresight of our board, or our council as we call it, has been that we found institutions established by acts of law, like NAST, UNAM, NIPAM, etc. And because they were mooted before the accreditation processes were entrenched in the system, our council at that stage resolved that for a given period, public institutions would have time to prepare themselves so that they don't just stop everything just to start waiting for accreditation at first to take place. You don't stop an aeroplane in air to fix something. It's moving. So that was the wisdom of the council at the time, and that's why all these public institutions, including NIPAM, were allowed to continue, and I'm grateful that in the process they, as NIPAM, has also kept the promise of coming back and saying, yes, we are prepared to seek accreditation, and today we have that evidence. And so does NAST. We have registered a number of qualifications, UNAM, vocational training centers, which are public. Although now we don't discriminate between public and private. Accreditation is for the entire nation, because the nation must move forward together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have unfortunately come to the end of our conversation this morning. It's been an insightful one. It's been an enriching one that I'm grateful for, and one that I'm sure the audience is also grateful for. Mr. Lukukela, your final thoughts that you'd like to leave us with this morning, please.
Thank you very much. For Ministry of Health, there's a training institution. For NIED, there is also, for education, there is NIED. For Ministry of Defense, there is a school. and this NIPAM is our school. Staff members, that's the public servants, should support it and develop now that there's even some accredited programs. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Short and sweet. Madam Kanu?
I think my concluding remarks would be to say that, as I mentioned earlier, let's not lose focus of what we are doing and why we are doing it. Quality is actually going to be the sort of distinctive. That is what is going to distinguish most universities. The provision of quality education is what is going to distinguish the universities and the providers, and we should aim very high. Thank you.
Okuhepa. Mr. Gertze, your final thoughts this morning, please.
Well, yeah. Congratulations again to NIPAM. An outcry call to the colleagues in the public service, make use of the opportunity. And the door is open for us to make Namibia a better place. Let's do it.
Okay, Eos. Madam, you have the final word this morning. Could you also, in your final remarks, touch on when the programs will be launched? Perhaps just remind us of the duration of each of the 3 programs. Thank you.
Okay. Well, mine would be a clerical call to action. We've indicated who our target audiences are within the public sector. We're calling upon the leadership of the public sector to ensure nomination, because without nomination and participants to attend the training, we will never be able to meet the transformation agenda of Namibia. And most importantly, again, without the funding that goes with the training, we will not be able to deliver on this set mandate. So I'm calling upon the target audiences to kindly get in touch with their respective ministries at the learning development offices and escalate their request for training. And I would then like to just touch on the launch. The Right Honourable Prime Minister will be launching the programs on Monday, the 25th of April, just next week. And we're basically expecting a very good turnout and support from government. This including the relevant OMAs. We are standing together as one in calling out to say quality improvement, improving service delivery at the respective OMAs is what we are trying to achieve. And so we're calling upon the public also, because we will not know if we are improving. We're calling upon the public to equally indicate what your experiences are at the service delivery points, so that we can continuously continue to improve on service offerings.
Tapandula Wenene. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for sharing your precious resource of time this morning, but also for sharing your expertise this morning. Let's continue building this country one constructive conversation at a time.
At a time. Thank you. Thank you.
We have come to the end of our session on accreditation in the public sector this morning at the Government Information Centre in the Namibian capital. From me, Dan McKisting, until next time, have a safe and scrumptious weekend. Goodbye.